I feel like that's a vibe here in Sydney. Everyone's really friendly and happy to see you.
The sunshine definitely helps.
I'm here with Emma, who is our head of region for Australia at Hoxton Wealth.
We've got a massive USP in Australia because what we do is so niche.
It's not easy to come to Australia. If you want to come as a professional, if you want to come and live here, you can't just rock up.
So the last thing clients want to do when they're thinking about their 70s and 80s and their retirement is they don't want to have that pull back to the UK of it being in a different currency, on a different time zone, if they need to connect to someone.
At Hoxton, we see the uptake of the app proposition. We see Australia as being one of our fastest growing markets for users of that technology. Is there a reason for that?
Everyone's not watching Bloomberg. Everyone's too busy out surfing in the ocean for that. Australia's got an extremely good superannuation system that works very well.
The great life comes with a price tag. Right, I mean, I've lived abroad for a long time, and you come to realise that basically that's the premise. The places that are expensive in the world are expensive for a reason.
I think the opportunities are exponential out here. We're always going to have people that need our services. There's limited companies that can offer it.
Everything's gone very, very tech. It feels to me that we're at a point where there's almost a premium attached to dealing with a human. Okay, today on today's episode of Hoxton Life, I'm here with Emma, who is our head of region for Australia at Hoxton Wealth, and we're going to learn about her Hoxton life and her life personally down here in Australia as well today. Thanks for joining me, Emma.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Welcome to Sydney.
Thanks very much indeed. And here we are in this really cool studio as well, which we've been really well welcomed here today. And I feel like that's a vibe here in Sydney. Everyone's really friendly and happy to see you. They certainly are. Since I've been here anyway.
Well, the sunshine definitely helps. Like, I feel like everyone is much, much happier when the weather is good. So that's a good plus.
Yeah, and the weather's a big draw, the lifestyle here, isn't it?
100%. Like, it's why everyone comes to Australia. It's not perfect all of the time. I think Instagram would have you believe that it's sunny 365 days of the year, which it's not, but it is the majority of the time, which just means that you can do so much more. It's a big outdoor lifestyle, and yeah, that's why most people are living out here.
Yeah, I noticed that, and to draw that comparison, I mean, I'm in the UAE, where it is almost sunny 365 days a year. Incidentally, they ship most of the sand from Australia to make the beaches in Dubai, don't they? Which is quite an interesting thing, given that the whole place is made of sand. But the lifestyle difference is noticeable. Yeah. People are out, they're active, and it's out on the beach paths. Everyone's cycling, running. It's such a high energy and like vibrant culture down here, isn't it?
And it's amazing. So, like, I live in the eastern suburbs, which is basically the coastline along, just full of different beaches. And you'll go down in the morning, and it's 6 a.m, and they're packed. Probably the busiest time of the day is like 6 a.m, and everyone's doing their exercise, whether that's running or swimming or just out having a walk and a coffee. But people really make the most of the lifestyle. So like that's before they've even started work. They've gone out and they've experienced some of the outdoor lifestyle then. And it's just great. Everyone's into their fitness and health. And it makes a difference to get that set up before you even start your day.
And is it more of a thing then that people go out for their morning exercise as opposed to going to the gym, which is what I'd see more back home? Is that more of the way it happens?
People do both. Like, the gyms are packed out here as well. You've got all your big brands that everyone definitely goes to the gym as well. But people alternate, I suppose. And it's easier to get up and get out when the weather's nice. Whereas a lot of the time in the UK, especially in winter when it's dark and rainy, you just make excuses not to go because you're like, oh, I'll just stay in bed. But yeah, people do a bit of both. They still definitely go to the gym. It's just people are more into their fitness in my experience. That might just be these parts of Sydney, but that's what I've definitely found since being here.
And lifestyle was the pull for you originally for coming here?
Yeah, like I kind of fell into it a little bit. When I started my career out in finance, there was an opportunity to work abroad, which I've always loved traveling. And I thought, great, sign me up. And then Australia was naturally on the cards because what we did with my previous company and was still around sort of Brits that had moved abroad. And Australia is naturally one of the countries where there are more Brits. And yeah, kind of got moved here with them and then stayed for the lifestyle predominantly.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest, well, it's the biggest biggest collective population of Brits overseas, isn't it? And it's always been like Australia is kind of like lusted after. It has been since I was a kid. I have friends who moved to Australia when I was in my 20s, and it's that faraway place. It's that ultimate getaway destination, isn't it, for Brits? I think.
I think the reason is because it is a bit of a home away from home. Like I've lived in another couple of countries, like I lived in Indonesia and Malta and Thailand, but nowhere's ever felt as much like home as Australia. And I think that's because, one, there are so many Brits out here, but two, it's an English-speaking country, which helps you kind of integrate into the culture. The culture is very similar to what it is in the UK. Yeah. And so when you've got all the same things that you like about the place you grew up in, but you have better weather and better outdoor lifestyle, then I think that's the reason why most people want to move abroad to here.
And when they move here, generally because of the distance, is it the distance, but they tend to make more of a commitment to be here for the longer term, right?
Yeah, I think when you've sort of said to all your friends and family, right, that's it, I'm off. And back in the day, it used to be that you'd get on that ship and you really wouldn't go back. Now it is more that people can go back and visit family more frequently, but because the lifestyle is so great out here, and once you get used to that, it is quite hard to then go back into what I tend to have thought about it was a bit of a grind back in the UK. Like everyone works particularly long hours, and when it is raining and dark, there's not as much to do. Whereas out here, you can just do more with your day. Yeah.
It does feel that it's more of a permanent move when people make it in higher droves. So, I mean, we were here doing an event last night and meeting a lot of Brits. And generally speaking, people had been here, the ones I was talking to, they'd been here for sort of 10 years or more. And it was very much a lifestyle permanent move. Whereas when we do those events in other parts of the world, it's, we've been here for 2-3 years, not sure how long we're going to be here. We might go home eventually. And does that mean it's a different type of planning that you're doing for clients out here?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think in other regions, you're right, it's maybe less permanent. And in other regions, our USP is in some maybe European countries or the Middle East, they might not be able to do the domestic financial planning because they might have the language barrier. So here we've not got that unique selling point, but for us, we're really moving their assets from country to country, and it is more of a permanent financial planning that we do help with those types of clients. Okay. And so we don't have the USP of English language, obviously. So that presents. Does that present a limiting factor or more of an opportunity that because things are English here, perhaps as a business we have a clear understanding of what the local proposition is about that we're almost competing with or dealing with? I think we've got a massive USP in Australia because what we do is so niche. Like the majority of the work that we do for our clients is UK pension transfers. And I think because the UK have so much red tape around pensions, because we've got a fully licensed and regulated by the FCA in the UK, I think that really helps us be able to offer that end-to-end service for our clients. Most of the local financial planning firms here in Australia do not touch the UK asset side of things. It's really complex. It can take a long time, and there's just too many rules for local planners to understand from the UK side of things. So I do think that there's only a handful of companies out here that offer clients what we can help them with. So I think there's a massive opportunity, especially when there's 1.2 million Brits out here, which is 1 in 20 people that live here. There's a lot of people out here that need our services, and not that many companies that can offer it.
That when you say it in those terms, that's incredible, isn't it? 1 in 20 people here are British. That's nuts, and that does immediately give a lot of strength to the size of the opportunity here. As you say, there's not a huge amount of competition or other companies here that are looking at that international market in Australia, is there? And obviously those 1.2 million Brits, they're not all wealthy, they're not all affluent individuals. But I mean, typically, what types of work, what types of industry are the clients in that are coming down to Australia and that live here and settle?
There's a lot of industries. It's not like other regions where there's a concentrated sector that everyone comes out for. It is similar to the UK in that way, that it's open to all sorts of people and industries and all walks of life, really. So it's hard to pinpoint that exactly because there's just such a wide range.
Right, okay. One thing I find interesting though about Australia, and I draw comparisons with where I live in the Middle East. It's not easy to come to Australia. Like, if you want to come as a professional, if you want to come and live here, you can't just rock up on a boat and just decide to stay. There's quite strict criteria visa-wise, isn't there?
Yeah, look, there is, and there's a common joke out here in Australia that everyone who wants a visa, you go into recruitment, because that seems to be a way that a lot of Brits out here tend to get a visa and then stay once you get the permanent residency and citizenship. There are more and more people wanting to come into Australia every year. And I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but there was like 3 times the amount of visas granted, I think, last year than there normally is. So they are open to letting more people in and expanding those industries that are available to foreigners wanting to come into Australia. Obviously, Australian government do want to keep a lot of jobs open for Australians. So it is challenging sometimes. But especially with the new exams that are coming into play for financial planning in Australia, I do think we'll see a massive shortage in the industry out here. And I think they will be forced to open up those visa restrictions to more people to get the demand that we need here for financial planners.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, because that's how it works, right? They have like a list of professions or industries where they want talent to come here, where there's a local shortage or whatever. So how is that right now with regards to financial planning then?
So with financial planning, it usually is always on the list. So there's usually like a short list and a long-term list of job opportunities, and they change so frequently. But financial planners, we do need more of them in Australia. So it should be possible for the right person with the right qualifications and experience to get the opportunity to be sponsored and go down that route to permanent residency or citizenship, if that's what someone was looking to do.
Okay. And the qualification sort of standards here, like obviously in the UK you have your level 4 and so forth. What's the equivalence and what's the structure out here?
Yeah, so look, they just brought into play some new standards in the industry. So you do now need like a diploma of financial planning to be able to operate as an advisor in Australia. If you are an existing financial advisor and on a register here, then you've got 8 qualifications that most people have to do before January 2026. If you're coming from overseas, you might have some exemptions with some of the exams that you've got prior to that, or it can depend if you were on a license in a foreign country before a certain time. So it really depends on each individual person, on their experience and their qualifications as to what they would need to do. But there's always going to be so many exams within the industry. It's a very regulated sector. We take it very seriously in Australia with making sure that people do have the right qualifications and experience to give that advice. And
that's a good thing, like the fact that they take it seriously in that way. So to be clear then, if you're a financial planner currently in the UK and you're considering taking your career overseas, you're looking at that as a proposition, then those level 4 qualifications, if that's what you hold, then they do hold credence in the Australian market, or there's some kind of equalisation event? Or
the level 4, not as much, but it depends on how long you were working in the UK as an advisor for, might hold some credit. The likelihood is that you will have to retrain and learn the Australian system, because although there are a lot of similarities, the superannuation system out here does work differently to the UK. So if you want to remain in the industry and have it as a professional qualification, which it is, then you would need to do some of the exams to become Australian qualified.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's touch on some of the sort of client scenarios and the sort of typical cases that you might come across. And as I say, I was speaking to some individuals myself last night to understand some of these. So one thing I know to be true, and it may be linked in with that permanence aspect that is more common with people over here, but it seems like there's a a common theme where people are very keen to bring everything here to Australia physically, so that it's all in one place. So they don't want money left the other side of the planet if they've decided they're going to live here forever. And that they want to bring that over here, combine it with anything locally that's now started to accumulate for them in Australia. So that seems to be a common theme with people when they settle here, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think people just want simplicity when it comes to retirement planning. People that have made the move out here and had made the decision that they're not going to move back to the UK permanently. So they would prefer to know that it's on the same time zone. Like here in Australia, it is far away, and it's on a completely different time zone. So people get frustrated when they have to sit on hold for hours and hours and hours trying to get through to these pension companies. Again, it can be very heavy on administration and paperwork and things like that. So the last thing clients want to do when they're thinking about their 70s and 80s and their retirement is they don't want to have that pull back to the UK of it being in a different currency, on a different time zone, if they need to connect to someone. If they're then getting to a stage of life where they want to enjoy retirement, and they don't necessarily think they've got the capacity to deal with that legislation changes, currency fluctuations, different bank accounts, like they just want simplicity. So I think when they're planning for the retirement, simplification really does play a big part in it.
Yeah. And that's what Hoxton, the great thing about Hoxton Wealth that we have is that ability to give that end-to-end advice. And we do it in Australia, we do the same thing in the US and other markets as well. But because we've got that FCA flagship regulated license there, I think that remains the USP, right? It's like there are other companies here operating locally, but we're pretty unique in respect of being able to give that end-to-end advice for people with assets in those locations.
That's something that Hoxton Wealth have done so well, and I know that we've put a lot of money and effort and resources into doing things properly. A lot of companies don't take that same approach, which doesn't give the clients that same protection of doing things properly and having the licenses in the correct jurisdiction. So a lot of what attracts clients to Hoxton Wealth is that ability to work with the UK office, make sure that they've got that FC regulated advice, make sure they've got the Australian ASIC regulated advice, so that, look, hopefully nothing ever would be incorrect with the advice, but for whatever reason, if it was, they're fully protected by those regulators. And that's what's so important to people when they're making a big financial decision, is they want to make sure that they're dealing with a reputable company that does things properly and that there is regulation and process in place to protect them.
And also, unforeseen things happen. So people might think they're going to stay here forever, but of course, life happens. They may end up returning for some reason back to the UK one day, and they know that we'll still be able to look after them if that happens. They move back to the UK, Hoxton Wealth are still there and can carry on to deal with them, right? And that's an important factor, isn't it?
Exactly. And again, we've spent a lot of time and effort and money into the Hoxton Wealth app, which is, in my mind, an incredibly useful tool for clients, and it allows them to keep track of any assets they do still have in the UK, because for whatever reason we might not be able to transfer everything across, and they might want to keep things in different countries for whatever reason. So being able to keep track of it all in one place that's linked to the GBP Aussie dollars and you can see it all in one place is really helpful for them.
And that's an interesting point to raise, because we see at Hoxton, we see the uptake of the app proposition. We see Australia as being one of our fastest growing markets for users of that technology. Is there a reason for that, do you think? Is technology usage here a very embraced thing?
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason Australia for us has the biggest uptake as well is it goes back to that permanency, and people do want to have that full visibility. In other countries, because they might not be permanently going to live or stay in that country, they might not have as many assets in the local country as they do in the UK. Whereas here, people do generally have UK bank account, Australian bank account, UK pension, Australian superannuation, UK investments or an ISA, plus an Australian investment platform and things like that. So it is very much equal, I would say, for most people out here, that they have their assets spread across both countries. Whereas what I find that in other regions, that's not necessarily the case. If they move to Germany or Spain, or they might not have lots of things set up locally as well as the UK. So I think that might have something to do with it as well.
What do you typically find is the level of sort of financial knowledge here amongst the audience? In the US, for example, it always seems like everybody's watching Bloomberg in the US. Everyone's watching the markets all day long. Like even old ladies are doing that.
Yeah.
That's definitely not the case in the UK. A lot of people just bury their head in the sand and don't really want to think about money. So how is it here? How knowledgeable are people on their day-to-day sort of money management?
I think it's a bit of a mixture. Like it's everyone's not watching Bloomberg. Everyone's too busy out surfing in the ocean for that. But it's not like people bury their head in their sand. Australia's got an extremely good superannuation system that works very well. And to your point, is technology play a big part in Australia? It does in that sense. It's the superannuation system, as everyone has apps on their phone, everyone has access to platforms, everyone puts money in every month to the superannuation through employment and things like that. So people are forced into saving a bit more out here just with the way that the system is set up. But people do generally take the advice of professionals. So they'll just leave their superannuation to be managed by the fund managers. They will seek financial advice, and they will get help from that side of things. And so I'd say a bit of a mixture in between in the UK and America.
Let's just unpack the superannuation thing, because some people might not know what that is. So just explain how that system operates.
Yeah, so a superannuation, it is the equivalent of the UK pension system. It's basically every employer has to do what's called superannuation guarantee. So it's 11.5% right now. Employers have to pay of their employees' salary into superannuation every year. So it's usually on a monthly basis that goes in, and it builds up throughout the whole working career of individuals, so that when they get to retirement, they will have a pot of money that's been invested throughout their 30, 40 years of working, and that should then provide them with enough income to support their retirement. And it generally works quite well. It's being increased. So it used to be like 9%, and it's slowly been increased up to, it'll go up to 12% next year, and then I believe it will continue to get higher to ensure that people do have enough in their superannuation to retire.
Okay.
Because Australia doesn't have like the UK state pension either. In the UK, everyone pays their national insurance and then they get a state pension at retirement. In Australia, they believe that everyone supports themselves. So everyone should have enough in superannuation if they follow the system and the rules and the process. But there is an age pension here if people do have a shortfall, but it is means tested against their assets and income as to whether they'll get something from the state out here.
Okay. So fundamentally, it's the employer that's putting the funds into that superannuation. Does the individual, can they add funds in there? Can they top it up? They
can do something called salary sacrificing. So again, they can sacrifice some of their salary to increase those contributions into superannuation. There's also like non-concessional contributions that people can put in. I won't get too technical on this, but that's the type of advice that we can offer clients as well, as to how to maximise those superannuation contributions and really make sure that they do have enough for their retirement.
Yeah, and I'm guessing these are the sort of questions you get asked by Brits when they come over here, right? Because superannuation is new to us, it's new to me, it's new to anyone who's moved over here, so they won't really understand in the first instance what that's about, because it is very different to what they're faced with back home, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And again, most people just go into the default one that their employer has set up because it's mandatory in Australia, so everyone has to have one. But again, it might not necessarily be the right one, it might not be invested the way they want to invest it. So there's a lot of people who do need help with their domestic superannuation and understanding how it all works as well.
Yeah, good. Okay. From a financial planner's standpoint, how complicated is that as a piece of work to navigate somebody through? If we take an individual who's just moved here, if they have got retirement assets back home, let's say they've got an employee pension back home in the UK, how does structurally do you start to work through that with an individual, like without getting too technical, obviously?
Look, it's a really complex process. As the years have gone by, it's just gotten more regulated and more complex, and it just takes a very long time. So it does probably take about 6 to 9 months from start to finish. We would typically approach those pension companies in the UK to give a full comparison on their existing investments, their existing fees and charges, and ultimately the tax differences between both countries. Those are the three main things that we need to go through and understand before we can give formal advice. Then we give a side-by-side comparison. We give advice documents which are about 45 pages long, just really explaining all of the crucial information that a client would need to know about making a big financial decision like that. If we feel that there's a superannuation that could offer lower costs or better investment performance and a better tax regime for them, then that's when we would make a recommendation if it was in the best interests of the client.
Yeah. Okay. And do you feel when you're going through that process, the priorities of people when they're here, is it, I think you touched on this a little bit before, but is their priority that consolidation aspect and simplification, or are they focused on sort of growth and performance of those assets?
Look, it really, really depends. We work with a wide variety of clients, and I'd say everyone has different key objectives. Like some clients that I speak to, if they've maybe had health problems, one of their objectives might be that their beneficiaries wouldn't inherit their pension. That can be for some people. Some people it is the consolidation and the simplification. Some people it's tax. There are significant tax differences within both countries. And others it can be sort of investment growth. They might not be seeing what they want to in the UK. Sometimes the UK pensions are quite heavily invested in UK shares and things like that. Whereas as we've seen over the last at least sort of 5-10 years, a lot of the growth has come from the US, which you've got the ability to change that in if you're making financial decisions. Whereas sometimes in the UK, people set and forget and might not have changed their investments for 10, 20 years. And what was good back then might not be performing as well as it could be or working as hard for them as it could be. So that could be a driver for some people.
Yeah. Okay. Let's we want to talk about the proposition of Hoxton Wealth and what we're doing as a business, right? So we've talked about the great lifestyle here, the beaches, the outdoor life and everything. It's not all roses, I'm sure. What challenges are people faced? If people are watching this and they're thinking about a career move, and maybe that means coming down to Australia, what are the things to be aware of that people might not yet know about that are a little bit of a friction point with trying to move down here?
Yeah, look, it can be challenging. You mentioned it earlier, trying to get a visa, and especially if someone's got a family, moving a whole family from one country to another, it can be a big move, getting kids settled into schools and visas and things. It can be quite a complex process, and it is far away. So just making sure that it is the right decision for you and your family. Also exams, making sure that you can give financial advice in Australia and maybe doing some of the exams before coming out to make sure that you can start straight away. Also, the affordability, Australia can be quite expensive. Typically the day-to-day stuff isn't so much, but the housing, the property market out here is very expensive.
That's really grown in recent years, hasn't it?
Massively. And I think that's because so many people are moving out here and they just don't have as much housing available.
Yeah.
So it's a supply and demand situation. But yeah, the key areas are very, very expensive for a housing in Australia. So that again could be a downside for some people.
Yeah. The great life comes with the price tag, right? I mean, I've lived abroad for a long time, and you come to realise that basically that's the premise. The places that are expensive in the world are expensive for a reason, because there are great places to live, and that's, you look around this city in Sydney and it's pretty ideal. So it makes sense that if you want a house by the beach in Coogee, that's going to cost you a few quid,
it's such an amazing lifestyle. Like I could sit and talk about Sydney all day, every day, and how incredible it is, but you don't really understand truly until you do that kind of day-to-day lifestyle out here. And that's what comes with the price tag. Yeah,
and the other thing is the tax event, right? the taxation. And again, I think I live in a tax-free jurisdiction in the UAE, but you pay for everything personally, right? So, and here, people from the outside looking in and they think, oh, it's quite a high tax quite a high tax environment in Australia, but then like in a lot of other places, things come subsidized, right? So yeah, those things always balance themselves out, don't they, from a personal perspective?
Definitely. Like if we look at a lot of where our clients are, the UK, the US and Australia, they're all pretty high when it comes to income tax. But I think people are willing to do or to pay their taxes if they do see where it's going and that it's giving value. So again, Sydney is probably the cleanest city, one of the cleanest cities that you'll ever go to. So that is a huge bonus. School, when you've got kids and things like that, and you're thinking about schools, the education system out here is amazing. The health system's incredible. You've got Medicaid out here. So again, everyone's more than happy to pay their cut in taxes if they're getting to see those benefits from it.
Yeah, and the schooling is a state sort of operated system here?
Similarly to the UK in terms of they've got private schooling or they've got public available, and the education system in general is fantastic out here, so you wouldn't need to go private. Oh, you could, but there's definitely a good system from the public side.
And there's the benefit of the non-existence of the language barrier, right? Because when you're a Brit, I've got 2 kids, and you almost have to go for that British curriculum school internationally, which comes with a price tag, in other parts of the world. But here, there's no real reason why, as a British person with a family, you can't utilise standard local schools, right?
Exactly. Free local schools, Medicare, which is free healthcare, and most of the things that you do on the day-to-day, like going to the beach or being outdoors, like it's free. So what you might pay in higher taxes or what you might pay in higher accommodation costs can be offset with a lot of the lifestyle choices out here, which don't have that price tag attached to them.
Cool. Okay. And within what we're trying to grow out here at Hoxton Wealth, this is becoming a major market for us, right? And you're leading the operation down here. What do you see the growth potential of this as a base for Hoxton Wealth, and what types of roles do you see that might be open in the future with our business?
Yeah, like I definitely think Australia is one of the most popular destinations for a lot of different countries all over the world, but particularly the UK, which is where we've had a big focus as a company. So I think the opportunities are exponential out here. We're always going to have people that need our services. There's limited companies that can offer it. So I think what we will want to do over the next few years is get more good advisors who have got a solid understanding of how the UK system works, and then also willing to learn the Australian side of things, and all types of jobs as well. We want to bring everything more onshore in Australia. As a company, we do have a lot of licensed advisors which might be operating overseas, so we want to try and bring more and more onshore to make sure that we can help our clients more and more every day. Yeah,
and you guys here are all backed up by the team in Dubai, our central hub, where you've got all the marketing team, my unit, and we've got the admin team and all the other back office functions as well. And we've discussed the success of the events we've done here this year, and we're going to do much more of those next year, hopefully, right, with more frequency and in other parts of Australia as well, because those are resonating really well, aren't they?
Really, really well. Like the seminars have been fantastic opportunity for us to connect with our clients and future prospects. I think what people like about them is they like that face-to-face personal interaction. They like coming along and they like getting that education that they can come and they can take on what they want to learn about finance and the company and everything like that, and then they can go and make their decision. So I think they've been really successful, and we'll continue to do more frequently next year.
It does feel here that face-to-face way of doing business. I've always felt that about Sydney. I love coming here. I always have loved coming here, and it always feels like it's ready for business, and people always out doing meetings over coffee. It feels like a really sort of not in an old-fashioned way, but people like doing business in a person-to-person environment, and we do get really good uptake for those events. I think for that reason, somehow people really value human interaction here still. Really
value it. And I think as well, because finances all over the world, as we get more into technology and things, people are more skeptical now because of things that have happened all over the world. So when they can see that there's a physical person, there's a physical office, and they can come in and meet you when they need to speak to you, I think a lot of people, especially if they're a bit older or if they've got large assets and they're making large financial decisions, they just really do want that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, and we've seen that, haven't we? That we'll have prospects that we might have been engaged with in conversation for some time, but they're almost waiting for an opportunity to meet us face to face, to put a face to that voice or face to that name, and see the whites of the eyes, and then that confidence is there that they want to move forward and deal with us, and that is very, very common, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like anything. Like, I always feel it's such a shame some of the banks are closing down and things, because I like going into them as well, and I can only imagine that older generations feel more strongly about that as well. Because it does just make it much easier to deal with a human being at the other end of the phone and have that interaction. So I think that's always going to be a big driver for a lot of people out here, and something that we can offer them. We do have an office out here. We do have people that are physically here and able to meet those clients and prospects. I think, again, that's one big advantage that we offer our clients.
Yeah, it's something I think about a lot from a promotional perspective, that we're almost starting to go full circle. I feel that everything's gone very, very tech, in a very firm tech direction, and obviously at Hoxton we're investing very heavily in that space. So I'm certainly not going to do that down, but it feels to me that we're at a point where there's almost a premium attached to dealing with a human now, and it's about what you just said about the banks and things like that. It feels like, oh, I'm not worth human interaction anymore. You know, you're just dealing with a bot or whatever. Yeah. So I think there is real value placed now on being able to deal with a human, and you feel looked after, right? Yeah. And that's important.
Yeah, and it's that security. It's a mixture of having both. You obviously need technology. That is what sets you apart and what speeds things up and allows more business to be done more efficiently. But I think you do need to get that balancing act right, because people do want to feel valued, and they want to have that security that someone can make those decisions and help guide them through. Because as we know, sometimes technology can go wrong, or it doesn't give you the outcome you want to, and people can get frustrated with it. Whereas if they've got a human being that they can vent to and just get things sorted, then I think that gives them comfort.
Yeah, and firsthand, you know, we've had that validated. I mean, the first seminar we did back in March, and there were people saying to me, "Oh, thank heavens, like someone's come and done this. Yeah. You know, finally, you know, we've been waiting for someone to do an event like this." I'm like, right, it's just a seminar about pensions, you know, but people want it in that format, sure. and that was really, really good to see, and it makes us want to invest more into that space. And I think that illustrates to me more than anything the opportunity that exists down here. There is a definitely a void that we fill here, isn't there? In terms of the advice, there's definitely a proposition here that presents a massive opportunity for people wanting to take their career overseas, and where better to do it, you know, in one of the best cities on the planet. That's quite a selling point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what other financial planners who want to get out of that UK space, there are so many similarities between the UK and Australia, from lifestyle to culture to financial planning. And I think it's an easier way to integrate when they've already got that knowledge, especially on what we do, because they can take that experience and knowledge of the advice they've been giving in the UK. And although there is qualifications and a learning curve in Australia, it is similar in a lot of ways. So they would be able to sort of use those talents that they've got and those skills to bring them across, and just hopefully have a better lifestyle at the same time. Absolutely. Well, look, I mean, I think we've covered everything today in terms of the proposition, and thanks very much for all the insights and the story of how things have been going down here in Australia. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this is going to develop. I hope to come back here again next year as well for more of these events, and hopefully a bigger team around you then as well. And hopefully today's conversation has generated some interest internally and externally about the proposition down here, and we'll see more people around you in this team. Yeah, excellent. Thanks for having me.